in there, it would cause destruction. So it was interesting to see yesterday that those towers actually did their job. So today we're going to watch any of these storms that get anywhere near there, because lightning is one of those things that we're watching carefully. Now this morning the Air Force, which does the weather outlook for Cape Canaveral, did give them an 80% chance of favorable weather. The problem is that was at launch time, which was at 8:33. That is not going to happen. It's going to be much later than that. So that the chance of seeing storms increases as we get later into the morning hours. I'm just updating the blog here from Artemis and seeing if they've had any updates. They have not changed since this morning. And what we have right now is an issue with conditioning that engine number 3, the RS-25 engine, which is number 3 at the bottom of the core stage. They cannot get it to properly condition. And launch controllers said the engine is increasing the pressure in that core, but the tanks are bleeding off some of the propellant, and so they can't get it under that proper temperature to start. So that is a big issue, and that was this morning at around 6:23. The fact that this has not been updated is not a good sign, because that means they're not making progress, and the issue has not been resolved. There has not been a scrub yet, I will tell you that. Honestly, Twitter's been probably the best place to monitor this. As we look through space Twitter, you see my space donuts there as well. We don't see any reports from anybody on the ground of there being a delay or a scrub right now. So right now, the good news is it's still on a hold. That's where we are now. We'll watch the blog carefully to see if there's any updates here. I don't see them adding any updates currently. So we'll see as this goes, but we're going to still kind of wait this out with you at home as we watch this, and hopefully we can get this launch off today. If it does not go off today, the next window is going to be Friday. Now, Friday's window, I think, starts at 12:45 p.m., which is great. You don't have to get up as early. I won't be drinking as much coffee. The problem is the afternoon thunderstorm activity is more prevalent during the afternoon hours in Florida, so weather could be more of an issue as we get later into the week. We also got a couple of tropical systems out there in the Atlantic, which could develop and maybe cause some issues down the road, maybe as soon as this weekend or early next week. So I think weather will become more of an issue if we do not launch today. So the technical issue is our problem now. Weather could become our issue going into the future. So a lot of folks have heard about the Artemis launch. Why aren't there people on this one? Well, obviously this is the test. We want to test every system on there. And while there aren't actual humans on board, there's something else. It's essentially crash test dummies. They have basically what would be pseudo astronauts on board with all kinds of sensors. And one of the interesting sensors, I was talking to Tony Rice last night, he's a NASA ambassador, was about these human dummies that they have on board that kind of test some of the radiation and other forces that the astronauts eventually will experience. Because remember, this mission is going much deeper into space than any of the Apollo missions, and how that's happening is the orbit that they will have around the moon is a much wider orbit, so that will put them at the farthest reaches that man has ever been. And so we don't really know what kind of radiation they will see out there. So that's why this mission is also important. We're testing all the technical parts, but there's going to be a human test done as well with those crash test dummies. So let's take a look at those, I hate calling them dummies, but we'll call them test subjects, these astronauts that are on board. They're not human, but they are going to give us a lot of information and a lot of research to help us kind of get prepared for when humans are on board Artemis II.
Although humans have traveled to space for decades, there are still many unknowns, especially when it comes to new equipment and traveling farther than ever before. With safety top of mind, NASA has a very special crew for its first flight of the Artemis program. 3 high-tech mannequins equipped with sensors will monitor conditions future astronauts will encounter. Sitting center is Commander Munikin Campos, whose chair will measure vibration and acceleration forces atop the new space launch system. And Campos will be wearing the new Orion crew survival system suit to be worn by his future human counterparts during those critical moments of launch and return. These custom-sized suits are pressurized, fire retardant, have a built-in waste disposal system, and provide temperature control and radiation protection for up to 6 days if needed. In deep space, astronauts will face radiation amounts unlike anything we deal with here on Earth. That's where Campos' companions, Helga and Zohar, come in. Known as Phantoms, each is packed with more than 5,600 sensors and radiation detectors. Scientists will be looking for more information on radiation loads on skin, muscles, bones, and internal organs, which is why Helga will wear a new protective vest. Once these Phantoms return, scientists can compare radiation exposure between the two and improve protection for future space missions.
Yeah, I like the mannequin. That's better than dummy. That sounds a lot better. But it is really cool. I mean, you know, the Apollo mission, we didn't really have the capability to test some of this stuff. So the fact that we could do this with Artemis and basically run this whole mission, I think that's the one thing. The launch is just the beginning of this mission today. This is a 42-day mission. So the launch is going to be spectacular. We're going to see a lot of that. But over the next 42 days, you know, this mission is going to continue. It's going to go do an orbits around the moon several times. It's going to deploy some small satellites and then do a splashdown. So it's basically a dress rehearsal for what would be the manned mission out to the moon. So this is going to be a huge undertaking over a 42-day period. Now we're still at a hold. We're at L40, which means the countdown has been held at 40 minutes. So we're not launching at 8:33 for sure. The launch window does go all the way till 10:33. So conceivably we can hold this all the way until we get to that 10:33 time frame. But if we're at 40 minutes before that and we're still at L40, that would definitely be a scrub because they're not going to take time off of that clock. I was listening during that story to the command control center there, and they're basically saying they're just still efforting. The engineers are still trying to troubleshoot this issue with engine number 3. Now, this rocket might look new to a lot of folks out there, and it is. It's got a conglomeration of several other parts from the Apollo mission, the Space Shuttle mission, but it is a whole new rocket. It's actually called SLS, and that's an acronym that they use for this launch system, this space launch system that's going to allow men and women to go deep into space, not just the moon, eventually Mars and maybe beyond. And our meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees here did a great story about Boeing and how they helped put this together. And I think the cool thing about this mission as well is that all the different companies in the US that contributed to this rocket, you see the size comparison there. You could see the Saturn V is slightly bigger just because of the configuration, but you see that SLS, it's bigger than the Statue of Liberty, it's bigger than the space shuttle, but it's more powerful than any of those. The amount of thrust that they're going to be able to produce here is going to be tremendous, and the reason there's so much thrust is the manned crew is actually going to be pretty light. When eventually we launch cargo, and what I mean by cargo is eventually we're going to launch the materials to put a lunar base and eventually a lunar space station that will orbit the moon. That's going to be heavier, so they need that thrust to get all of that weight off the ground. So eventually you're going to see the top of the rocket get bigger as they put more cargo in there. The Orion capsule is pretty small, it holds 4 people, but eventually once we put bigger segments on there, this might end up being bigger than the Saturn V rocket. And meteorologist Brittany Van Voorhees talked to the folks at Boeing about what it was like to put this rocket together and the pride
Boeing
they had
has built the
doing this.
Rocket ever launched, NASA's Space Launch System. The company boasts it is the backbone for a permanent human presence in deep space. Here to discuss what makes this rocket different from anything we've ever seen is Christine Ramos, an engineer with Boeing Space and Launch. Thanks so much for being with us, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
So what is different about the SLS rocket than anything humanity has seen before?
Well, this rocket is pretty powerful. When we designed this rocket, we designed it not only to be man-rated, but to be evolvable, to be able to really be customized to all of the future missions for just having a sustainable presence in deep space. So you can change it for cargo, co-manifest, crew, and that's what makes it so different. And the fact that it's so powerful that we can carry much more than any other rocket is a big game changer.
What makes this technology both new but also different from maybe things that we've seen like 50 years ago, right, with the Apollo missions?
So when you saw it before with Saturn, you did see that block configuration, and that's what we have. And that's what's pretty similar. The new that we have a new crew module done with Orion, and we do have a new second stage that's going to change us and allow us to carry a lot more.
What did Boeing have to do to accomplish these specific goals to create this rocket?
Oh, wow. It took a lot of people, a lot of really great, smart people. We designed the core stage really looking back at our previous history, our heritage, and working with a lot of suppliers, across the nation. Over 45 states, we have 1,100 suppliers that we work with that really have not only heritage knowledge, but a lot of progressive ideas and concepts that we incorporated into this program.
I know a lot of scientists, right, are always trying to do this, but what makes this exploration in particular, the subsequent rocket, more sustainable, right, for us?
This is more sustainable just because we can carry a lot more. It's customizable. And for us here to really kick it off, it's just really powerful, For a lot of other programs, they haven't seen something like this, something this big, this powerful, this customizable. So that's what makes it so much more different than any other the rockets.
And the last question I have, and really just out of curiosity, right? So Boeing talking a lot about the future too, right? So how will you guys ensure that the SLS and future, technology can make it to these future missions that you want to accomplish, like the gas giants, outer solar system, and interstellar space?
We're already looking into that. We are looking way ahead of that. We're always focused on Artemis, but with the Science Decadal that just came out in April, and then we're looking at the heliosphere that's coming out Decadal, we're already looking at missions that will take us further and beyond. If you understand our fleet of SLS, you'll notice that we can customize to bigger volumes, a better upper stage that will allow us to go further to Uranus, Neptune, the interstellar space. So we already have plans to look into that and to work with our science communities on that.
You'll love to hear it. Thank you so much again for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just a spectacular rocket. And there's a really cool map. If you ever get a chance, go to the Artemis webpage on NASA. They have this cool map of all the different locations and parts that were sourced. And there's actually, I clicked on the Carolinas, and what was interesting is there's a couple locations in Mooresville and in Charlotte. One was Sunbelt Rentals, was actually one of the locations that contributed to this. So from every part of this mission, you've had some part of the United States, whether it was state, city, that has contributed to this. So truly an amazing accomplishment to put this on. Now we're still on hold. I did get an update while we were watching that. I just was refreshing the blog, and this was at 8:19. So the teams continue to hold while gathering data. So they're holding still at T40 while engineers continue to assess an issue with conditioning engine 3. It's one of the 4 main engines at the base of the central core there, RS-25 engines. Engineers are looking at options to gather as much data as possible. So it sounds like they're still troubleshooting, but that was an update at 8:19. And so we're still in a 40-minute hold. So we're not going to launch on time. We kind of knew that was going to happen, but it doesn't sound like they're giving up hope just yet. They're kind of holding on potentially that we'll be able to get off the ground. And I'm going to show you real quickly the part we're talking about. So these are all the sections. The part we're talking about is down here. These are the RS-25 engines. So there's 4 of those down there, and number 3 is the one that's been causing issues. They cannot get it to pressurize and temper and get the correct temperature. So what they're doing, it's called conditioning. They're basically putting propellant in there and bleeding some off, and in that process in engine 3, the temperature is not in a stable location for launch. They can't get it to a temperature that's favorable for launch. So that's problematic because the boosters do 70% of the work, but a lot of the workload after that, the 30%, are going to be done by these engines and the rest of the stages. Now, these do the main work to get it off the ground, but these will be going on as well. So that's why it's going to be spectacular. You've got these giant solid boosters, and then you've got these 4 main engines that are all going to be going off at the same time. So if you were down in Florida, this would be a spectacular launch. And one of the questions I've been getting locally here in the Carolinas and other parts of the East Coast is this visible for areas on the East Coast? Not really, because the trajectory with this launch is basically due east. So this due east trajectory takes it out over towards Africa. And I'll run the simulation here. This is a great website that I use. It's actually free for calculating these trajectories. Photographers use this as well. It's called flightclub.io. And so we'll run the simulation here, and you can see it running. And I'll show you the trajectory of this launch. Now, typically, if you live on the East Coast and you follow me on social media, I talk a lot about these pre-dawn and post-sunset launches off the East Coast that are spectacular. Those are usually up the East Coast. This one is off to the east. So See if we can get the profile to load here as it continues to load. Sometimes it takes a while. We'll do the 3D visualization here. And so we'll kind of show you the map. So you can see the trajectory is basically that red area off the east coast. So the trajectory is going to be basically towards Africa, not up the east coast towards Newfoundland or up towards Greenland, which is typically more visible for folks in the eastern US. So this trajectory, while not visible for most of the east coast, if you're in Florida, it's going to be absolutely spectacular because of all of those engines. The plume will be amazing. If you've ever witnessed a space shuttle launch, I think it's going to be very similar to that, but maybe about 20% brighter and more dynamic because of all these engines. And the space shuttle launches were always amazing. So we're still in a hold right now, 40-minute hold that we're waiting for this engine number 3 issue to be resolved. You know, these engineers, they have redundancy after redundancy. They are probably scrambling around like crazy, figuring out, they're probably making calls to colleagues in other parts of the world. Hey, you know, what can we do to resolve this? The thing, these are the engines that were rebuilt from the space shuttle. So most of the engineers that probably worked on these are based in the United States. So there's probably a lot of scrambling going on to like, how do we figure this out and get these going? And this is one of those problems you're probably wondering, you know, well, how does this just pop up the day of the launch? Well, these are things you don't really know until you start fueling the engines and fueling this system. So these are the processes that happen right before launch. And when you do that, you kind of notice these issues. And so that's the problem right now, is we kind of wait and see what's happening. So, you know, the mission control for this, you know, is in Houston. You've probably heard, you know, Houston, we have a problem. Well, it's interesting when you see these launches from Florida, but mission control is actually all the way over in Texas in Houston. And our station, KHOU, there did a story about how mission control works and is run out of Houston for these missions flying out of Florida.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
Once the Artemis I solid rocket boosters fire, the launch team hands over the reins to mission control at NASA's Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. Here, the flight control team will be flying Orion.
The engineers that are sitting at the console, they're the people that really have the deep technical knowledge.
Every command, every milestone is marked by watchful eyes. But they aren't working alone. Katie O'Reedy manages the Mission Evaluation Room, or MIR.
If something goes wrong, or the flight control team has a question about kind of a funny signature that we're seeing in vehicle performance, the MIR is the team that goes off and does any supporting analysis or digs back through our history of data to see if we've seen stuff like that before. And then we make recommendations to the flight control team.
Houston, we've had a problem.
America was introduced to the Mission Evaluation Room in 1970. During the ill-fated Apollo 13 mission, an oxygen tank ruptured, crippling the spacecraft carrying 3 astronauts 200,000 miles from Earth. Engineer Arturo Campos and his team in the MIR went into action to find a way to reroute the electrical system, giving the astronauts enough power to make it home. Another team worked on air scrubbers so the astronauts had oxygen. Another recalculated the path home. The teams of technical expertise made the difference. In 52 years, that aspect has not changed. The MIR team is always anticipating the mission's next moves, ready to jump in at a moment's notice, something they've been practicing.
Sitting in the MIR manager console, and honestly any console that's being supported, it's really intense. The simulations, I think, prove that to everyone. Usually by the end of an 8-hour shift or so, you're ready for a break.
Yeah, so pretty amazing that they hand off everything over to Houston. Now, we're still monitoring, you know, the feeds down here. The rocket is still on the pad. We're at a hold at 40. I'm watching the weather as well, because this was my concern if we had any kind of delay, was the later we got into this launch window this morning, weather was going to become more of an issue, because as you know, if you've lived in Florida, if you've been to Florida, these afternoon sea breezes start kicking up. And right now you can see Cape Canaveral, we've got showers near the Cape. So I think even if we were going to launch right now, we might be in a weather delay, because we've got these little showers. Now, I'm not detecting any cloud to ground lightning currently in those cells, but doesn't mean the rocket itself can sometimes trigger lightning as it goes through there, and they will not launch through precipitation. So if there's any rain at all in that flight path, they will not go through that. So I'm looking at the live feed here off to the side. I can actually see a shower off. Guys, if we could pop that back up, it's pretty, you see, look at that. There's the shower off to the right. So we show you the radar. You can see it on the radar, but then you look at the picture, you can actually see the shower beyond right there. So there's the rain shower. So we're looking offshore, and yeah, there's a rain shaft there. So that's the shower you saw on the radar. The rocket's going to go that direction. It's going to go off the east coast of Florida and towards Africa. So right now they probably would be in a weather delay, even if it wasn't for this engine issue, which if you're just tuning in, we're going to go to NASA TV and kind of listen in. I think they are debating or talking about what's happening here. I think they're going to scrub, yeah. It sounds like that's going to be, it's an official scrub, guys. So as I was suspected.
This is Artemis Launch Control.
Here we go.
With an update. Launch Director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson has called a scrub for today. Again, Launch Director Charlie Blackwell-Thompson has called a scrub of the attempt of launch of Artemis I and the Space Launch System with the Orion spacecraft. The issue that came up was an engine bleed that couldn't be remedied.
So as you just heard, guys, they've scrubbed, and we were hearing rumors about this for a while. I think two things happen here. One, obviously the engine issue, but as we were just discussing the weather, I think once you throw the weather in there, I think the launch command was like, hey, we haven't figured out the engine thing, and even if we did, we'd probably be in a delay right now for rain as well. So we're basically already 3 minutes into the launch window. That likely would have put us outside the window. So I think it's probably a good idea that they scrub today, because they can really work and get cracking on this engine issue and figure out what's going on. Hopefully they can get it taken care of. Now, where we're going now is that this is going to be scrubbed. The next window is going to open up on Friday at 12:48 p.m. And that 12:48 p.m. time could be somewhat problematic for weather, even more so than today. We saw showers popping up this morning, but Friday, think about that. That's right before 1 p.m. And you know how heating of the day goes. There's more storms that time of year. So last night I was able to talk with Tony Rice. He's a NASA ambassador, and we talked about what happens if we see a scrub. What's going to happen with this mission on Friday. If this is the problem, then the Friday launch could be just as problematic for weather issues, even if they get that engine issue kind of figured out. So Tony was talking about some of the things that will happen now with this second launch window coming up on Friday. I'm hearing the control center again here. We're gonna wait a second. So as I'm listening with you guys, it's an official scrub, but it does sound like they're keeping the fuel. Okay, did they not scrub? So it's kind of conflicting information. It sounds like they scrub, but it does sound like they're going to keep the fuel in there, and maybe this is to help troubleshoot the engine. I only heard about half of the conversation. Okay, so it's an official scrub, but it does sound like what they're doing, they're not going to vent off all this fuel. I think they're going to keep it on to kind of use it as a way to troubleshoot the problem. Okay. So yeah, they're gonna. Again, an availability to launch. The next availability to launch is 12:48 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Yeah. So I'm listening here, guys, and so basically what they're saying is it is an official scrub today, but it does sound like they're not gonna basically power everything down and drain the fuel. They're gonna leave it in to kind of use it as a way for the engineers to work on this engine. So they're going to take advantage of this scrub to basically, let's use what we have in there already, and we can troubleshoot this as if we were going to launch and see if we can't figure it out. So they're not going to launch today, but they're not going to completely wind everything down so that the engineers can work on this engine. So it'll be interesting to see, and sometimes you see some that looks like smoke or sometimes vapors. That's super cooled liquid oxygen and hydrogen that is venting off continuously. They have to continuously fuel that because it's always evaporating and venting off. So that's when you see that. That's what looks like smoke or sometimes or steam is that really cold liquid oxygen and hydrogen bleeding off. So they're going to continue to troubleshoot this. They have officially scrubbed, which means our next window for this launch will be Friday at 12:48 p.m. That is a 2-hour window as well. As I was just talking before we listened in there quickly, that's a problematic time frame for thunderstorms because that's the heating of the day. The other concern I have for a Friday launch is that out in the Atlantic, we've got some tropical activity. We've got a tropical system in the middle of the Atlantic that's probably got about an 80% chance of development. I'll show you real quickly. This area in red right here in the middle of your screen, you could see that could be off the east coast of Florida or the Bahamas, maybe not directly impacting Cape Canaveral, but those tropical systems, if they're off the east coast of Florida, that's the recovery zone. If there is an abort of the mission, you've got ships out there, you've got recovery of the solid rocket boosters also. So that recovery area has to have good weather as well. So if there's a tropical storm or a hurricane out there, that could cause issues. So that would be problematic. And then let's say they scrub again on Friday. The next window is Monday. For sure, one of those tropical systems is going to be off the east coast of Florida, whether it's this one, or maybe something else. So tropical activity could become more of an issue. So I think weather is going to become more of an issue with the scrub today. Hopefully Friday we can go. If not, Monday would be the next one. And I don't even think they've even announced a window beyond the Monday. So today's definitely been scrubbed. We'll have to wait and see if they're going to announce on Friday. Maybe they'll open another window sometime next week, so they'll always have 3 kind of available. But again, I talked to Tony Rice, he's a NASA ambassador, lives in the Raleigh area, about what this means scrubbing today and what happens on Friday now that we're in the second launch window. So we have a scrub of the mission. So when's the next launch window for this if we don't go off this morning, which it looks like that's not going to happen?
Yeah, these things happen. I've seen far more scrubs and I've seen launches, but we want to have the best success, and the weather criteria are important. So the next opportunity is going to be on the 2nd, Friday. And that's unfortunately the window opens at 12:48. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's prime time for the sea breeze coming in off the coast. And if you've been to Florida any time in the summer, we have afternoon thunderstorms. It's like clockwork, that 2, 3, 4, 5 o'clock time frame. And lightning is one of those big criteria. We've also got some tropical activity out there as well that we've got to contend with. So I'm curious. So what if a tropical system or a hurricane were to head towards the pad? Not so much, on the launch day, but if they were waiting for a window to open, would they have to roll the whole rocket back into the assembly building?
Rollback is always a possibility.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that takes a day.
Yeah.
Because it's rolling at a top speed of about a mile an hour. So forecasters are probably watching that activity pretty strongly, especially after a scrub like today, and would probably pull the trigger pretty quickly and get that thing rolling back to the barn several days in advance. So it might seem a little frustrating that a rollback happened, but it's all out of pronounced caution.
Yeah, so let's look at that. I mean, we didn't talk about this earlier, but let's talk about the timeline. This is obviously the huge test, right? We got to test this. Pending all this being a successful test launch, right, for Artemis I. So what is the next step after this test mission for Artemis?
So immediately after recovery, immediately after the crews are recovering that capsule as it splashes down off the coast of San Diego, they're going to be gathering all that data. They're going to be gathering all the information that was pulled together during this mission. It is a test. Ultimately, this is a full out test of the Artemis program. in preparation for making whatever improvements need to be made to put people on board. And that's the next step, is the Artemis II mission, which will include a crew. And it'll look very much like this Artemis I mission does. And we could actually see a North Carolinian on that Artemis II mission. She's been selected, Christina Cook, a graduate of NC State. She also went to the North Carolina School of Science and Math. And she was among those that were selected several months ago to be a part of this. She could also be one of the first to step back on the moon. She could be the first woman to step on the moon.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I mean, those people that end up being the first ones, and they're going to be famous, right? I mean, especially in the age of social media, can you imagine if we had social media back during the Apollo missions? I mean, as famous as those astronauts are, what is this going to mean for those astronauts that are able to go and actually go on the moon with Artemis II?
Well, every astronaut I've ever talked to, and I've asked some of these kind of questions of, they say it changes you. I mean, simply going into space, it changes you, and they call it the overview effect. And it sounds simple, but it's really, really impactful to them. Simply looking down on the Earth and seeing it without borders, seeing the weather patterns moving around, it makes you look at things a little bit differently, and they all turn into environmentalists afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, you all of a sudden realize how insignificant you really are when you get that view. So, if we've got a couple backup windows, right? We've got the next one, and if, let's say, we get scrubbed again, let's hope that doesn't happen. How many windows are open before they just say, you know what, we're just going to wait this out? Or are they just going to keep waiting and eventually launch this rocket?
It will eventually get launched, and they've announced those first two windows, Friday, September 2nd, and the other one is Monday, September 5th. That's kind of the near-term ones. Looking at the mission plan going farther out, there's launch windows available through December.
Okay.
So this will go off at some point. The biggest challenge in Central Florida is often the weather. Yeah. So hopefully we'll be able to pull it off on Monday. If not, there's other opportunities that are available.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned this before, but that this is not just a short mission like the Apollo missions. This is 42 days or 41 days. So we're going to be able to, once it launches, I think that's just the beginning of the fun, right? Every day we're going to get some kind of cool update as the mission goes on. And so once the mission takes off and we're in orbit, let's say around the moon, what are some cool things that you're looking forward to as the mission is progressing before the splashdown?
I'm hoping that we see some interesting images come from the mission. I'm really looking forward. The geek in me wants to see that radiation data. What does that look like really far past the moon? Even getting out towards some of those positions where NOAA has space weather satellites that are measuring something. How different is what Artemis is going to measure from some of the things that some of the measurements we're seeing with coronal mass ejections and other space weather that's coming from the sun? That's really going to help inform predictions here on Earth. I'm looking forward to the data, really.
Yeah, and I think that'll be cool. So I just thought about this, but this is a question I have because I'll probably get this question from viewers. But so obviously the trajectory for us in the Carolinas, we're probably not going to see it. But if you have a telescope or you've got a great camera, would you be able to see the capsule at all in orbit around the moon? How hard would that be able to see once this mission is underway?
It's a good question. And it's one that is actually really similar to the question about, can we see the hardware that was left on the moon by the Apollo mission? And the answer is no. Unfortunately, it's just too small. The Orion capsule is 5-10 meters tall, which even the Hubble is going to need closer. If we were able to point the Hubble Space Telescope at the moon and look for Orion, it's going to only be able to resolve something about 100 meters.
Yeah.
So here on, even if you've got those nice, big, long, expensive camera lenses, you're not going to be able to make it out, unfortunately.
It just seems like you got that moon, and I think the moon's so vivid in our night sky. I don't think we realize how far away it still actually is, And this mission
will be so many great pictures.
Oh yeah, I mean, this mission I think will be a great kind of a lesson on like how long it takes to get there and like the process of getting that. That's the one object we all see in the night sky, but this mission is really going to hit home how hard it is to actually get up there. So Tony, great to talk to you again. Hopefully once we get this rocket off the ground, we can do this again. And I'm looking forward to the follow-up missions, because this is going to be just an amazing thing to follow over the next years and decades. And like I tell my kids, I mean, they're really looking forward to maybe eventually being on Mars.
That's the next step, isn't it? But we got to figure it all out with Artemis first.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks for doing this.
All right, so yeah, we scrubbed today. That's the bad news. We still have issues with the engine number 3. The engineers are still working on trying to resolve what's going on there, because obviously we can't figure this out today. We're not going to launch on Friday. So the next launch window opens up on Friday, September 2nd at 12:48 p.m. It's a 2-hour window. That would be a 39-day mission. Splashing back down on October 11th. Then let's say we scrub on Friday. The next window opens up on Monday, September 5th, launching at 5:12 p.m. And that would be a 42-day mission, similar to today's launch. So you notice how the launch windows will affect how long the mission goes, because you have to have the perfect launch window to get out, and then the splashdown window has to be there as well. So what's interesting is if we do launch on Friday, after today's scrub, the mission will actually be, and again, it doesn't have to directly impact Cape Canaveral. If there's a hurricane off the east coast of Florida, that's the recovery and the abort area for this mission. So you got recovery ships and stuff out there that would be problematic, and obviously it would not be ideal to be flying a rocket that close to a hurricane, even if it is off the east coast of Florida. So that's the other thing we'll have to watch. Now, I feel like I jinxed everything because I went to Krispy Kreme this morning and bought Artemis donuts. So now we got a whole dozen of Artemis donuts that people in the newsroom will get to eat right now. Probably was that we jinxed it. So again, if you're just tuning in, the bad news this morning, we've got a scrub. It's really primarily because of engine number 3. At the base of the main stage, they could not get it fueled correctly. It's called conditioning. Basically what it was is they pump fuel in there, they also vent it out at the other end, and they could not get the pressure corrected, and then also could not get the temperature to be stable. So it was not the proper setup for launch on engine number 3 of the 4 main engines. So that happened, and then as we started seeing the delay happen, we saw showers and thunderstorms developing off the east coast of Florida. In fact, one point we could see a shower in the background of this picture right here. So I think the combination of the technical issues and then the weather starting to become an issue, it just looked like today was not going to happen. So it's an official scrub currently today. The engineers have not taken all the fuel out. I think what they're doing is, since they know it's a scrub now, they're actually going to use the fuel in there and keep working on that engine as if they were going to launch today. And if they can figure that out, then that would be great for Friday, because honestly, even though it's a scrub and we're going to end our stream today and probably going to turn away, these engineers are just getting to work. They're going to be working hard over the next couple of days because they want to hit that window on Friday, because if they don't, then it's Monday. And then I have not seen NASA release any more additional windows. I do think on Friday they're probably going to have to come up with a third window. They always like to have this redundancy. So when you see one scrubbed of the 3 windows, they're likely going to add another one, probably what would technically be a 4th one, at some point late next week to make sure they have some backup plans. But as I mentioned, weather is going to be increasingly become an issue over the next couple of days. If we go back to the graphic here, I want to show you guys the problem that we had today. Great interactive site on NASA to see all the different stages. Well, it's going to scroll down. You can highlight what each stage does. So this is the liquid hydrogen tank in the middle. At the very base, you've got these RS-25 engines. There are 4 of them. They are super powerful. In fact, these are the same engines that were on the space shuttle. They've been re-engineered again. And these provide a lot of the lift, as well as the solid rocket boosters. These are actually solid fuel, so they packed in. Think of like if you had a model rocket. They burn for exactly 2 minutes and provide 70% of the lift to get it off the ground. These main engines do a lot of the work during that as well, but also the rest of the way. These engines have been the problem. 3 of the 4 have been okay. It was engine number 3 that they had issues with. They could not get it to condition correctly, and that put them on a hold for the 40 minutes, and then it kept holding and delaying, and then weather became an issue. And just a short time ago, if you weren't watching, the flight director said It's an official scrub. They just did not feel like they were going to be able to get the problem resolved, and then weather was becoming an issue, which was going to add to a delay. And again, the window was going to close at 10:33. They got to launch in that window. If not, it's a no-go. So these launch windows are pretty specific. And when it starts at 8:33, they try to launch right at the beginning of the window. That gives them 2 hours of delays. If they can't get in that time frame, then it's a scrub. So today's an official scrub of Artemis I. We'll have to wait till the end of the week. I think of all the folks that are down in Florida that travel down there, some estimates 100 to 200,000 people down there to see this launch. Either they're going to extend their stay, they're going to come back, or head back down there, and hopefully we see a launch on Friday. The interesting thing about the Friday launch, it will be in the middle of the day. It won't be early in the morning, and if the launch happens on Monday, that would be in the evening hours or dinner time. So again, thanks for tuning in today. We will have coverage again on Friday. James, you have to tell me my year. I think we believe we're going to start maybe around lunchtime, around noon. Yeah, 12:15 Eastern time. So about 30 minutes before launch window opens, which is at 12:48. So very similar to this morning when we started at 8 a.m. with the launch window starting at 8:33. We'll be about 12:15 Eastern time, and the launch window will open up at around 12:48. So 33 minutes after the start of that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get this launch off on Friday, and if I have to, I will buy another dozen of Artemis donuts from Krispy Kreme, and now I get to go eat those and enjoy your morning. Hope you have a great morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and keep your fingers crossed that on Friday we can get Artemis I off the ground as we head back to the moon and beyond with NASA.